All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started off here. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining today's webinar brought to you by Avail and the Local Initiatives Support Corporation. Just to start us off, my name is Robert Bates, and I'm a community manager here at Avail. Just a quick bit about Avail. Avail is a free platform that helps improve the lives of do-it-yourself landlords and their tenants. Currently, we have over 750,000 landlords and tenants from across the United States who use Avail for everything from rental listings to rental payments. We've partnered with LISC Los Angeles to not only highlight some of the challenges faced by landlords and tenants due to COVID-19, but to also help spread the word about accessing relief funds provided by the state of California. Today, I'm joined by Tanua Thrashentuk, Executive Director of the Los Angeles Local Initiatives Support Corporation. I'll give Tanua a chance to introduce herself here in just a second. Quickly want to run over the agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Tanua is going to lead us through a general overview of the California Rent Relief Program. That's going to be followed by an overview of the information you'll need to prepare prior to applying, kind of a landlord checklist, as well as an app overview. And then at the end of today's webinar, we'll allow for some time for questions and answers, so some Q&A. And now I will pass the mic over to Tanua. Tanua, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you for having us on today to support your small landlords here in California in particular. As was stated, I'm Tanua Thrashentuk, Executive Director for LISC in the Los Angeles market, but I'm serving as the California market lead on behalf of LISC in the implementation of this program. Today, I'll walk through a bit about the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program and what you need to know as a landlord, and encourage you to apply and to have your eligible household tenants apply for the program as well. So this webinar is targeted specifically at landlord applicants and those who own property in the state of California and have income eligible households. Here we have who can apply. This program is designed so that landlords who have income eligible renters who are experiencing financial hardship due to COVID-19 are able to get that past due rent paid. So how much relief will and can I get? Based on the current state program, landlords can get reimbursed for 80% of their past due rent that accrued between April 1st, 2020 and March 31st of 2021. Landlords do have to agree to waive the remaining 20% of unpaid rent. One of the things to keep in mind is that eligible renters can also receive help for future rent, and that could be equal to 25% of their monthly amount to help them stay in their homes. They can also be eligible for 100% of up to 12 months of unpaid and future utility bills. So we want to encourage landlords to participate, because if the landlord participates, it's 80% of payment. If the landlord does not participate, the tenant may only receive 25% of the arrears. And so that's just a lot less incentive on behalf of the landlord. So the state's program is really what we call the 80-20, and here's how the program was designed to work. If a landlord who's been receiving hopefully 25% of more of a tenant's monthly rent will still be at this point seeing 75% of that rent is unpaid. Many tenants out there were able to keep up with at least paying 25% so that they could have some eviction protections during the COVID-19 crisis. And so those tenants, we understand, will also still have 75% of the rent that's unpaid. When you, as a landlord, and your tenant, an eligible household, participate, the state will pay 80% of that unpaid rent. Again, we'd ask the landlord to forgive that 25%. And then after reimbursement, the landlord would really be seeing at least 85% of total rents that were owed during that period. This, again, would be based on a landlord who had been receiving at least 25%. The other thing I want to say before we move to our next slide is that an eligible household is a household that has income less than 80% of the area median income, is a household that has been impacted financially by the COVID-19 crisis. These matters have to be met in order for a household to be eligible. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about this concept and kind of walk through a couple of scenarios. So this would be an example if a tenant's monthly rent is $1,000. That would mean over a year's period, the tenant would have owed $12,000 in rent. In example one, the tenant is paying 25% of their rent. So they've been able to keep up with paying 25% of their rent over the last year, providing $3,000 to the landlord. Under this program, we know that there is another unpaid portion. And so that unpaid portion, or 80% of that unpaid portion, would be paid by the state of California. That would be $7,200. The landlord would be asked to forgive that $1,800 or 20% of the unpaid rent over that period. So that means that the total rent recovered by the landlord, the $3,000 that the tenant has paid, the $7,200 that the state of California would have paid, would equal about 85% of the total $12,000 that was owed to the landlord. In example two, if you had a tenant who could do even better than paying 25%, and that tenant had been paying 50% of their rent during this accrued period of the last year, from April 1st, 2020 to March 2021, then the state would be able to pay 80% of the unpaid portion of the rent, which would be $4,800. The landlord would be asked to forgive 20%, or $1,200. And so then the total rent recovered by the landlord would be $10,800, including the $6,000 that was paid by the tenant and the $4,800 that was paid by the state of California. That $10,800 represented 90% of the $12,000 that would be owed to the landlord during that time period. We believe that landlords who participate in this effort are helping to get rents paid. It saves money on legal fees and reduces the uncertainty and keeps more people housed. You'll notice at the bottom of each of the slides, we have the housingiskey.com website. That website is where you'll find out more information about the program, the application itself, and other details regarding the program, including frequently asked questions. So as a landlord, you would really be able to answer these questions in order to confirm that you are eligible to apply to the program. In order to apply, you also have to have a valid email address. Both you as well as the tenant should have a unique, individual and valid email address. If you're a property owner who's leasing a unit within the state of California, if you have eligible tenants who have not been able to pay rent between April 1st, 2020 and March 31st, 2021 due to a COVID-19 related event, if you have a tenant lease agreement or written agreement of some sort with an eligible set of tenants or households, and you agree to waive the 20% of unpaid rent for the above time period that I listed herein. Next slide. We will also be focusing on verifying the residence. So you just need one of the following. In addition to one of the following, you will also be asked to complete an IRS W-9 form. This form will allow for the state to be able to provide you with the reimbursement for the unpaid rent. This information should reflect what you put in your IRS tax documents to confirm that you are a landlord. So you must either have a lease agreement, a state-issued program ID, an official letter from a third party showing name and address, a government-issued library card, or utility statements that are provided directly from the provider. This is to verify the residence. Next slide.
There we go.
You'll also be asked to verify ownership. Again, you only need one of the following: copy of a property deed, a mortgage note, a property tax form, or homeowner's insurance. Again, you only need one to verify ownership. This document will need to also, confirm with the other documentation in terms of the name and who is the landlord and the connection of ownership. Next slide. And you'll need to verify the amount of rent owed. So if you have a current lease signed by yourself and the tenant that identifies where the unit is, who the tenant is, and establishes the rental payment amount, this will be helpful. If not, you can also provide evidence of any rental payments that may include a bank statement or other documentation showing a pattern of paying rent by the tenant, or a written attestation by you as the landlord, who can be verified as the owner of the unit, that this is how much is owed, this is how much has been paid, and this is how much you need from the state. Next slide. So part of what the state will be doing as well is cross-referencing the information that you provide with other government agencies and third-party databases. One of the areas that we would encourage you to do is in the application itself, it will ask you if you've received any assistance before on behalf of this tenant. It's very important that you share if you have, so that we do not have a duplication of benefits. A duplication of benefits could make you liable for paying those funds back, as well as any penalties associated with that. So we would want you to make sure that you note if you've received any funds before for this particular tenant and or unit. You don't want to have a duplication of benefits. Once you've put all the information together, as I've just described herein, we'd encourage you to visit housingiskey.com and click on the COVID-19 rent relief icon to apply. There you'll find the application and additional details as well. For your reference, here is what the housingiskey.com website looks like. You see here that you will click I am a landlord, and your tenants, who also should be applying, would click I am a renter. The applications are separate and different, but they will be connected based on the unit location, the information provided about a landlord's contact information and or renter's contact information, and or if one of you applies, the landlord, for example, and you get a case ID number, that information can be shared with the renter so that the application can be paired even faster. Information is available in several languages, as you see here. So we would encourage anyone who needs assistance to reach out so that we can help you get the application completed. But here you'd click I am a landlord from the website housingiskey.com. Here is an example of what the actual application would appear to be. You can see here that there is general information that will be requested of you as the landlord, including name, address, telephone number, email, DUNS number if applicable, and in a government issued ID number as it appears on your W-9, depending on the type of number you have available. You'll see throughout the application, there'll be an opportunity to upload documents that you need to share as part of the application. This is mobile. This is a mobile enhanced and mobile friendly application. So you are able to upload a picture from your phone if that is the way you're applying to the program. In addition to providing your information, you'll be asked to provide as much information as you have about your tenants. So you would go ahead and identify the income eligible household tenants that you have and provide their email address, and phone number. If you happen to have more than 10 tenants that you are uploading for, there is an opportunity to upload an Excel spreadsheet to include all of the tenants that are part of your network. Here, you should also note that the file would ask that you provide any other documentation regarding the lease or any other statement regarding what arrears or back rent that the tenant is owing to you. Next slide. Once all of that is complete, you will be asked to review a few attestations confirming that all the information is included in the application is correct and is true. That information you can see and you'll go through here at the application level. Next slide. At the end of the application, you'll find that there are a few boxes that you'll need to check. That'll confirm that you understand the goals of the program, that everything you've submitted is true and accurate, and that you agree to waive the 20% if you're paid the 80% from the state of any back rent. That concludes our session for today. Again, we would encourage you to look at housingiskey.com, where you can find more information out about the program as well as apply to the program.
Awesome.
We'll now open it up for question and answer. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tanua. And we had a few questions come in via the Google registration form. So
Okay.
a handful of them I want to try and address now. So will a link to the recording be sent out afterwards? Yes, we do fully intend to share this recording of this webinar session, as well as tomorrow's webinar session with our audience and with others as well. There will also be a link to this video on YouTube. So you will be able to access this information following the actual webinar itself. Tanua, there's another question here that says, let's see, is there any benefit for landlords who have waived rent increases due to COVID-19?
So if it wasn't something that was owed, then it's a little more difficult. If the issue is you did not increase the rent and did not make a statement of that, which would make that still potentially an owed amount, this program is really focusing in on the rent that is owed. So if you have an agreement that says that the rent increased and you increased it, but you didn't take the rent in, but it is still owed, then you'd be eligible for the program.
Awesome. And another question that we got, my tenant just moved out April 21st, 2021. The COVID rent relief program covers only unpaid rent until March 31st, 2021. Do I qualify for rent relief?
The point of the program is to try and keep people housed. Our goal is to focus on those households right now based on the legislation who are still within the unit. In addition to paying the rental arrears through March 31st, 2021, the program also pays future rent. So that was a possibility if the tenant had remained, if they still needed assistance in April for paying their rent, they would have been eligible to apply for future rent payments as well, up to 3 months.
Got it. Perfect. And then we got another question here. I'm going to quickly read it off to you. Hi, I first want to say thanks for organizing this webinar. I am a landlord and I submitted my application in the 3rd week of March. My tenant submitted their paperwork as well. Has there been any update on how long the process usually takes? Thank you.
Great. We're so happy to hear that you and your tenant have applied to the program. I'm hopeful that all of your information that you've submitted has been reviewed by case management and hopefully is all complete and they don't have any questions. Part of the timing is still not as obvious that we can provide a specific date. Do know that the state was prioritizing households that have income less than 50% of area median income. So very, very low income households at 30% and 50% of the area median income have been prioritized for payment. And we do know now that payments are starting to move. And we've already begun making payments directly to landlords regarding the program. I would also say that there was also a focus on paying those households that submitted for back rent that was owed. And so if your tenant falls below 50% of area median income, has back rent that is owed, that tenant is going to be prioritized first in the state's process per SB 91.
Got it. And then we did get a clarifying question. Someone said, do you know if a tenant has to be occupying the property at the time the application is submitted? If they are not, the application would it cover rent owed before they vacated? Any prohibition against that?
Again, we really want to focus on trying to keep people in the unit. We're looking to keep people, housed. And so part of why the program was announced when it was to give renters and landlords an understanding of a pathway towards being able to get help for payment. And so if your tenant is no longer in the space, I believe you would not be prioritized as being able to receive payment under this program.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tanua.
I do see a couple of other questions, Robert.
Yeah, let's take a look here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Looks like in the chat we have, let's see, will you be covering unpaid late fees and or utilities?
You can note the late fees in the application, I believe, but what will be prioritized is the rent owed and not necessarily the late fees. And for utilities, yes, this program covers rent and utility arrears that are owed. So tenants are encouraged to go ahead and put that information in as well. And utilities have the potential to be paid up to 100% of what is owed in arrears.
Got it. And then it looks like this last question here. How does the tenant prove that they had income reduction due to COVID-19?
So the tenant has several ways that they can prove that they had income reduction in their rent, in their income, and which made them unable to pay rent. Those are all itemized on a checklist on the Housing is Key website. They certainly can also show, if they have it, their tax returns from 2020 showing their income of less than 80% of area median income. If they have any notices from their employer that note that their hours were going to be cut or that they were going to be eliminated in terms of the positions that they might have in working. If they qualified for unemployment, the CalFresh program, other programs within the state that are income-based and based on need, if they have documentation regarding their ability to qualify for those programs during the time period, all of those items can be used to confirm that a tenant has had an income reduction as a result of the COVID crisis.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nua. It looks like we did get one person who's raised their hand to talk. I'm going to go ahead and allow them a chance to ask their question. Let's see. I think their person's name is Ed. Let's see. Go ahead and hi, Ed. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Your comment about prioritizing payment is confusing. So I think you just said if a tenant vacated, the payment to the landlord would not be prioritized. So that means tenants who are already in the premises will receive payments before a landlord who has a tenant has vacated. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yes, and in some cases, the interpretation is that the landlord may never receive payment potentially for a tenant who has vacated. So the state legislature has set the program guidelines. So you should definitely take that up with your state legislature in terms of what your expectations are regarding supporting landlords and what landlords need at this moment.
Looks like we have another person, Albert Martinez. If you could, hey, Albert, if you could include your question in the chat section, that would be great. Albert's question says, will the landlord be notified if the tenant application failed to qualify, and what the reasons were for that failure?
So there is a bit of a wall between the landlord application and the tenant application. The landlord would be notified if for some reason the state is unable to locate the tenant and to get the tenant qualified. And so the only reason, the main reason a tenant would not qualify would be based on income. And so as long as that can be established, the state and organizations like ours are committed to making sure the tenant is able to complete a full application. I'm not sure that landlords will be able to know the reasons why a tenant application was not able to be fully qualified, however.
Understood. And then it looks like we got one other follow-up question, or two other follow-up questions here. I want to be super respectful of your time. I'm going to go ahead and ask these super quick. Are there plans to extend the deadline past March 31st?
So both of these questions regarding the eviction moratorium and the expansion beyond March 31st are matters that have to be taken up at the legislative level. These are matters that the legislative body in the state of California has set. And so right now we're working under the current legislative mandate, which keeps the program at March 31st in terms of arrears and the eviction moratorium. We are just following along with what the state legislature has done.
Awesome. Perfect.
And if the tenant does not either complete the submitting the documentation, or if the tenant is not income eligible, then the landlord will not be able to receive assistance. All right, Robert.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanua. And honestly, we really appreciate this. Tomorrow's session, we do anticipate having, we anticipate being joined by Dion Roberts, who is also the president and CEO of TDA Consulting, who's going to join our presentation then. But we will be having a session tomorrow as well for a number of registrants who have signed up for that session. That will be about an hour later, I want to say, than today's session started. So thank you so much, Tanua, Jacqueline, really appreciate your efforts with all of this. And if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, we will be sure to post this webinar link across our social, and we'll also share that link with Tanua and Jacqueline.
Thanks so much, Robert.
Thank you so much.